In this video, we'll be covering how to make this cinch sack, which is designed for my Crochet 6 Basics course. If you haven't been following that, don't worry. This is just a beginner pattern, and anything that's a little bit more advanced we will go into during the course of this video. So in order to make this, you'll need about 41 yards of a worsted weight yarn, so that's like a 4 weight. You're going to need a 5.5mm hook, some scissors, a tapestry needle, and you will need a stitch marker because part of this is worked into concentric rounds, and that's generally best if you have a stitch marker. So to start out, I'm going to be working into the first chain to make our first round. So I'm going to start with a slip knot, and I'm going to work 2 chains. And we'll work 6 single crochets into this first chain to start our rounds. If you know how to do a magic circle, go ahead and do that to mitigate the hole in the bottom. But because this is for beginners, I'm not really expecting people to know magic circle. We're going to do this and work 6 single crochets into this first chain. I'm going to work 3 in this one side of it. And to try and mitigate that hole in the center, I'm going to sort of pull on that slip knot, find the other side of the chain, and also work 3 single crochets into the other side of it. This can be a little tricky, so get my hook in there. And there we go. 2 and 3. So that's going to be our first round of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 single crochets. I'm going to put my stitch marker in. I usually put mine in the final stitch of the round. If you put yours in the first stitch around, totally good. But I always put mine in the last stitch of the round. So for the next round, we're going to put an increase in every stitch, a single crochet increase in every stitch to be specific. What this means is, so we're going to work into this first stitch for now. We're going to do 1 single crochet, and then in that same stitch, we're going to put another single crochet. So we've got 2 single crochets worked into the same stitch. We're going to do that for every stitch around, so we'll have 12 stitches at the end of this round. See, I'm working into the same stitch that my stitch marker is into. You can remove the stitch marker if you want. I tend to leave it in there until I'm done working into that stitch, just to ensure that I don't lose my spot. Move that back to the last stitch of the round. For the next one, we're going to do a single crochet increase pattern. So we're going to alternate single crochets and single crochet increases all the way around. What we're doing right now is just building up the bottom of our cinch sack, making sure it's roughly flat. Okay. Move that stitch marker back to the top. And we're going to kind of follow the same pattern for all of the next few rounds, where we're going to add another single crochet before our increases to do 6 increases around. So we're going to do, for this round, single crochet 2, and then do our increase. And that's just how this is going to go for this round. That last stitch in there. There we go. Okay, this is going to be our last round of increases. We're now going to single crochet 3 and then do our increase. That'll get us up to 30 stitches around. So single crochet 1, 2, 3, and then do our increase. All right, so that last stitch will get us to 30 around. Move my stitch marker one. Well, actually, I'm going to remove it. So we've done this has all been worked in spirals so far, right? We haven't flipped our work. We haven't done a chain one. It's all been spirals. At this point, we're going to be starting to work in turned rounds. For Crochet 6 Basics, this is so we get practice with multiple types of working in rounds, right? So we have continuous spirals and we have turned rounds. So we're going to do a slip stitch to our next stitch. Then we're going to do a chain one and turn our work. This is not super typical for patterns, I don't think, but I'm doing it this way for the sake of the course. So this next round is just single crochets all the way around. There's no increases. So we're going to work in that second loop from our hook, which is essentially that slip stitch we just made. We're going to start there. And slip stitches can be a little tricky to work into. So if I'm ever having trouble working into a stitch, sometimes I'll grab my stitch marker, stick it under the loop and like kind of just pull it up a little bit. And that usually tends to loosen up the stitch a little bit. You can see it's a little gappier there. That can make it a little easier to work into if I'm struggling. So if I'm just starting a project that's worked in rounds and I can't get into the first stitch, I'll do that sometimes. But this round is single crochets all the way back to the start. Right, last couple of stitches here. The last stitch we're going to work into is this guy here. You can kind of see that our chain and our slip stitch have this little loop that goes into that stitch there. So this guy right here is going to be our last stitch of the round. Now what we're going to do, because we're now working in turned rounds, we're going to slip stitch that first stitch. So that's this guy right here. This time we're going to chain 2 in turn because we're going to work half double crochets in the back loops only for this whole round. Now really quickly, you can see a little bit of a difference on the sides of the spiral rounds. That's because they're not turned, so while we were doing spiral rounds, we were always working with this side facing us. We now have turned rounds, which you can see the single crochets look just a little bit different texturally between these two. This is going to be the back side, so whatever side was facing away from you while you were doing your single crochets in the spiral is going to be the inside of our pouch. So that's going to also be, while we're working these half double crochets, the correct side of the pouch is going to be facing us. So we're going to do half double crochets in the back loops only. So I've chained 2, I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to go just in the back loop of that slip stitch. It can be a little tricky to work into. So again, sometimes I'll grab my stitch marker and just pull it open just a little bit more just to make it easier to work into. But back loops for this one, all the way around with these half double crochets. Can also be a little bit tricky because we're not really quite working in anything that has actual height yet. We're still kind of working flat. So this last row of single crochets might be a little bit tricky. I'm having trouble with it. Right, last couple of stitches here. That's the last one. So we're going to then again slip stitch to that first stitch, closing the round. You can see if we don't do that, there's this split in there, so we don't want that. We're going to slip stitch to that first stitch. So now you can see that it sort of started to fold in. I'm going to fold that back right side out. Something that just tends to happen when you're working in rounds, it'll tend to go one way versus the other. Just try and flip it back right side out when you notice that. We're going to now chain 2, and we're just going to work half double crochets all the way around this row. Just normal. Going to work through both loops. You can see I get that entire stitch over my hook when I'm going in. So just half double crochets is normal for this entire round. You can also see that because of that like split at the start, I'm not using a stitch marker. It's a lot clearer here to see where your rounds start and end than it is with spirals. Because with the spiral, you know, it's continuous. You're not going to really be able to see where exactly you start and end. Okay, last stitch here. I'm going to slip stitch to my first stitch. And the next round we're going to chain 2 and do half double crochets around again. Just every stitch gets a half double crochet all the way around. Okay, that's that round done. You can see that we're starting to get these walls built up, right? Like it's sort of starting to have a sort of width to it. So now I'm going to chain one for this next round, turn my work. This time we're going to work single crochets all the way around into the front loops only. Now remember, front loops are these guys that are facing me. So this, whatever section I'm holding, the front loops are the side closest to me. So I'm going to get my hook right in there, grab just that front loop, and work my single crochet. Same thing here, front loop. I've just got that one loop on my hook and single crochet. And that's going to be all the way around this row. Last one here, single crochet, slip stitch to that first stitch, closing that round. We're now going to go back to a half double crochet around. We're going to chain two, turn our work. This time we're going to half double crochet in the back loops. So again, these guys are the ones facing away from me as I'm holding it. So if I'm holding my piece like this, back loops are these guys back here, furthest away from me. Start here, going into that middle, just doing half double crochets in the back loops all the way around. And slip stitching to that first stitch. All right, you can see we kind of have these ridges now because we were working the front and back loops. There's this kind of bump here, just adding a little bit of texture to this pouch. All right, we're now going to chain one and single crochet all the way around in the front loops again. We're going to do a few rounds of this sort of like single crochet in the front loops, half double crochet in the back loops, That's what's going to give us that texture in the middle of the pouch. So this is single crocheting in the front loops all the way around. Didn't quite catch all of that thread, kind of split the yarn. There we go. Okay, now we're going to slip stitch that first stitch. If I can make the slip stitch happen. Slip stitch the first stitch, chain 2, turn our work. We're going to half double crochet in the back loops only, all the way around. So again, back loops only, all the way around this guy. Last stitch, slip stitch to the first guy. We're going to do one more set of that single crochet, half double crochet thing. So we're going to do a chain 1, turn our work, single crochet in the front loops only here, and this will be the last of this type of round. Next one will be half double in the back loops only, and that'll be the end of these front loop, back loop stitches. last stitch, slip stitch the first one, chain 2, turn my work. Okay, we're going to half double crochet in the back loops only for this one, and that'll be the last of these back loop rounds. So again, half double crocheting just through the back loops of these stitches. Last stitch here, slip stitching to that first stitch. This is where it can get a little bit tricky here, is this next round, all right? So this is where we add in some puff stitches, which is what gives us this texture, right? I have an alternative for this if you're finding yourself struggling with these puff stitches, but first I'm going to show you how you do it with the puff stitches. So we're going to do a chain 2, turn our work, we're going to half double crochet in this first stitch. We're going to do a puff stitch in the second. So a puff stitch is like a half double crochet decrease all into the same space. So a half double crochet decrease would look like this. So if I start a half double crochet but don't finish it, start another half double crochet, don't finish it, yarn over, pull through both of those at the same time, that's a half double crochet decrease. I keep not saying it right and I don't know why. Half double crochet decrease. We leave both of these unfinished until the very end. What a puff stitch is you're doing 3 incomplete half double crochets in this next stitch. So I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook, grab a loop. Yarn over, insert my hook, grab a loop. That's 2. Yarn over, insert my hook, grab a loop. That's 3. I'm going to yarn over, pull through all 7 of those loops on my hook at the same time. If you're struggling with this, I totally get it. That's a lot of loops. Try and get your tension as loose as you can without, going crazy loose. But if you're struggling with these stitches, don't worry about it. You can just straight up go ahead and half double crochet all the way around if you are struggling with it. For those of you who do want that texture and are able to do those puff stitches, that's great. I'm going to do those 3 incomplete half double crochets and then finish off with that 1 pull. So if you are doing these puff stitches, you're going to alternate half double crochet, puff, half double crochet, puff, all the way around. Also, you'll notice that we are working these on the back side of our work, so I'm facing the correct side of this pouch away from me. That's because the puff stitches tend to pop out towards the back side of your work from whatever way you're working it. little bit tricky to sometimes pull those loops through, especially if you only get one of them at first. So don't feel bad about pulling out that stitch and just starting it over. It kind of just happens sometimes. All right, if you're doing the puff stitches, this last stitch should be a puff stitch. I may have screwed up somewhere and done 2 half double crochets rather than a puff stitch. So I actually am going to work into this little slip stitch space to get that last puff stitch in there, just because I think I screwed up. Not a huge deal. Crochet is nice because unlike knitting, there's not really dropped stitches. There's just, whoops, I missed a thing, I'll just toss an increase in. You can do in knitting, but not in the same kind of a way. So I've slip stitched my first stitch once again. We are now going to chain 2 and turn, and we're just going to half double crochet all the way across, all the way back. Chain 2, turn, half double crochets in all of these guys. All right, there we go. Slip stitch to my first stitch. Now I'm going to chain 3 and turn, and we're going to do a row of double crochets all the way back. So 1, 2, 3, and double crochet on these ones. This is going to be the row that we weave the cord through after we finish off. So if you find yourself having trouble figuring out what row you're on, or like what stitches look like which, you can always grab your stitch marker, stick it around your turning chain or something like it, so that you know which row you're working into with your cord. Nothing wrong with using stitch markers. They're there for a reason. I toss them on everything when I'm doing something new. Literally, they're everywhere. Okay, finish that row. I'm going to slip stitch my first stitch. And this is where we get to figure out if I screwed up my count on that puff stitch row or not. So this row is where we start the decreases. So I'm going to do a chain 1 and turn my work. I'm going to single crochet 3, 2, 3, and then I'm going to toss in a single crochet decrease. So if you don't know what that is, I'm going to insert into the next stitch, pull up a loop, insert into the stitch after that, pull up a loop without finishing that first single crochet. So I have 2 incomplete single crochets on my hook, and yarn over and pull through both of those. So again, single crochet 3, insert, pull up a loop, insert into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 of those guys. So we're going to do that 6 times all the way around, so we have 6 total decreases. And when you look at that, I did screw up my count. That's okay. It's not super critical. So I'm going to just do an extra I'll just do an extra decrease in here, just so we get back to the start, slip stitch to my first stitch. Yeah, I probably added in another puff stitch or put something in somewhere in that row where they shouldn't have been. Totally okay. Tends to happen. So that's it for the pouch. So I'm gonna grab my scissors, cut this so I have enough to sew the tail in with. I'm gonna move my stitch marker closer to the front so I can actually see it. The way I like to finish off work in the round is with, like, people call it like a invisible finish or something like that. Essentially you make it look like the finish is part of the thing, but so you basically you take this, you insert your needle underneath the next stitch, so I'll probably actually go just one further over, underneath like that, and then I'm going to put it back through here. And you can see it sort of cleans up and makes it look like the finish is part of the rest of the tops of the stitches. From there, kind of weave this in however you like. I just kind of go for a little bit and then call it good eventually, you know. Doesn't have to be perfect. We go over that, back through some of these guys. That should be okay. Snip that, leaving just a little bit of excess. I'm getting through all of the strands of yarn. I'm going to flip this inside out so I can weave this in. This is a little bit more tricky because these are all single crochets. So it's a little bit of a tighter fabric down here. But, like, just kind of do what you can, you know. Just trying to make sure nothing comes undone. Strands aren't poking out everywhere. Just looks nice and clean at the end. So I'll probably just weave it through here and then cut it. And sometimes you lose your thread and that's okay. Ow. I'm going to cut this again. Just about here, leaving a little bit of excess because it's not super critical. I'd rather leave a little bit of excess so that it doesn't unwind itself. So that is the pouch itself done. I'll push that to the board again. Now we need to make the cord. I'm going to do this with a contrasting color just so it's easier to see. Also because it kind of looks fun. So we're going to take our cord. What I'm going to do, take this guy. I'm going to chain about 40. I just need it long enough that it will go around the circumference of the pouch, you know? So about 40 is what I've seen works. Okay, so that's about 40. Snip this. Pull that out. All right, I'm gonna grab my needle, thread this guy through it. Now what I do with this is I actually weave it over and under the double crochets, right? So I'm going to, you can do it a couple different ways. You can sort of fold it in half and find roughly the halfway point and go under those 2 stitches. So you can see I've gone under these 2 double crochets with my needle. Or you can go to your chain and count back like 15. So this is my turning chain that I've looped my stitch mark around, and I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So there's 15. I'm going to go under stitches 15 and 16, and that'll be my halfway mark. Rethread my needle because I lost it. And we're going to go with this sort of over 3 stitches under 2 stitch pattern. So 1, 2, 3, there's 3, now under 2, like that. 1, 2, 3, and under 2. Sometimes you catch the other yarn with your needle, and that's fine. Just happens sometimes. Some yarns are more prone to it than others. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, under 2. This is probably where I screwed up with my decreases, with my stitch count. So I'll just go under 3 here. Not a huge deal. You know, it happens. You make it work. None of this is so critical that it has to be perfect for it to like work or not. It's just a little cinch sack. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, and under 2. 1, 2, 3, and under 2. And then 1, 2, 3, and the under 2 here is going to go under this double crochet and under our chain, just so that we have the 2 ends of our cord coming out at the same place. I'm going to remove that stitch marker, and I'm just going to tie these ends together in a knot. So I'm literally just going to do this. I'm going to try and center that knot as much as I can on the ends of this chain. So if you watch, I'm going to like try and shove that knot down so that these 2 are in the same spot, and that knot just sort of sits right on top. You see that? There's a little bit of gap here, but the knot there is basically on the ends of that chain. I can stretch this out a little bit, make sure that's all sitting right, and then I can trim the ends of this guy. And we're good. That is it for this cinch sack. You can see that it's obviously a little bit wonky because I screwed up, but you can see that it also, like, it still works as intended, even though I screwed up. But that's it for the cinch sack pattern. You can see it's still like a little wonky, but you know, it doesn't really matter. It works. If you follow the pattern correctly and don't make mistakes, that won't happen. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.